My name is Tina Oliveros, and I'm 33 years old. Have you ever walked into a room and instantly felt like you weren't supposed to be there? Not because anyone told you to leave, but because of the way no one looked up when you arrived. Like a decision had already been made without you, and your presence was just an inconvenient footnote. That was the feeling in the hospital room the day my father was discharged. Everyone was calm, too calm, the kind of calm that only exists after something irreversible has already happened. My father had survived 3 heart attacks, 2 strokes, and a lifetime of physical labor that left his body worn thin, but his pride stubbornly intact. He was lying in the hospital bed, smaller somehow, his robe bunching around shoulders that used to carry everything without complaint. Machines hummed softly. Sunlight spilled across the floor. And standing beside the bed, clipboard in hand, was my younger brother, Daniel Oliveros, 31 years old, the charming one, the one everyone trusted because he smiled when he spoke. Already signed the discharge, Daniel said when he saw me lifting the clipboard slightly like it was a prize. Don't worry, Evie. I'll take care of everything now. Everything! The word echoed in my head while I smiled back the way I always had. Polite, measured, non-confrontational. For years, I had been taking care of everything, quietly, invisibly. Doctor appointments, insurance calls, prescription schedules, bills, home care coordination. I kept binders, receipts, notes written in the margins of calendars no one else bothered to look at. I didn't announce it. I didn't demand credit. That was my role in this family, the steady daughter, the reliable one, the one who didn't make scenes. Daniel was the opposite, always had been. The golden child, the one with potential, the one people excused. He moved back in with Dad a year before the last stroke, claiming he wanted to help. Helping mostly looked like sleeping until noon, leaving messes behind and telling everyone else he had things handled. Dad's speech had been slurred since the stroke, his balance unreliable, but Daniel talked over him constantly, translating, deciding, redirecting. He gets confused sometimes, Daniel liked to say, his tone gentle, reassuring. But I've got it under control. I wanted to believe him. Hope is a dangerous thing when you're tired. The house had already started to feel wrong during my visits. Burnt coffee, unopened mail, medical invoices shoved beneath magazines. Once I found Dad trying to heat soup on a stove burner, still covered with a plastic cutting board. Daniel wasn't home. Still, every concern I raised was deflected. Oh, I handled that. You must have missed my text. Dad wanted it that way. There was always a reason, always a story. Then came the 3rd stroke. I took unpaid leave from work for 3 weeks, coordinated rehab, spoke with doctors, sat with Dad during his lucid moments when he looked at me with fear flickering behind his eyes, and asked if the house was okay, if the bills were paid, if Daniel was doing all right. I told him yes, because I didn't want to scare him, because I didn't want to believe what I was already starting to see. The morning of his discharge, I arrived early, documents in hand, ready to review the care plan with the nurse. Instead, I walked into a room where Daniel was already settled in, relaxed in control. That clipboard was the line. Not snapped, not broken. Aligned. I didn't argue. I didn't question why he signed anything without me. I smiled, nodded, told him I was glad he was stepping up. I kissed Dad on the forehead, told him I'd be by later, and walked out of the hospital with my jaw clenched so tightly my temples throbbed. The next morning, while Daniel played hero in front of neighbors and relatives, I was sitting across from my father's lawyer, the one no one else remembered, the one who had drafted Dad's will years ago, back when Daniel was still asking for gas money. I opened my binder, every receipt, every appointment, every note. And then we talked about durable power of attorney, the kind Daniel had no idea already existed. Because that's the thing about being the quiet one. No one ever sees you coming. And while my brother was busy changing Wi-Fi passwords and moving Dad's checkbook into his home office, I was laying the first stones of a road he didn't even know he was walking on yet. I didn't plan revenge. Not yet. I just wanted to make sure my father was safe. But 2 days after Dad came home, I stopped by the house around 10 in the morning and everything changed. I didn't call before stopping by that morning. 2 days had passed since Dad came home from the hospital, and something about the quiet after discharge always unsettled me. The kind of quiet that follows a storm, not peaceful, just suspended. It was a little after 10 when I pulled into the driveway. Daniel's car wasn't there. I rang the doorbell. Nothing. Knocked. Still nothing. I stood there for a moment debating whether to leave. I didn't want to wake Dad if he was sleeping, didn't want to look like I was hovering. But that same tight feeling I'd had in the hospital crept back into my chest, the one that told me something was off. So I used my spare key. The house was quiet in the wrong way. Not restful, not warm. The air felt thick like it had been holding its breath too long. I called out softly, "Dad." No answer. I stepped into the living room and that's when I saw him. Dad was sitting in his recliner, hunched forward, wrapped in a robe that looked 2 sizes too big. A cold cup of tea sat untouched on the side table. The television was on, but muted. He wasn't watching it. He wasn't sleeping either. He was just staring. Blank. Like someone had paused him mid-thought and forgotten to press play again. His eyes didn't flick toward me until I touched his shoulder. "Tina." He blinked a few times, confused. "What are you doing here?" The question landed heavier than it should have. "I came to check in," I said gently. "How are you feeling?" He shrugged, tired. I asked if he'd eaten. He frowned, thinking. "I think Daniel brought me some toast." It was 10 in the morning. Dad was diabetic. I walked into the kitchen. The sink was full of dishes crusted with food. The fridge was nearly empty. 2 beer bottles, a takeout container with something unidentifiable inside, and a half-empty bottle of ranch dressing. No fresh food, no prepared meals, no insulin in the fridge door. I found a granola bar in the pantry, poured him a glass of water, and sat with him while he ate. He apologized between bites, mumbling that Daniel had been busy lately, that he didn't want to be a burden. The words twisted something inside me. "Where is Daniel?" I asked, keeping my voice neutral. Dad hesitated. He said he had errands. I didn't have to wait long to find out what that meant. Around 11, the front door swung open. Keys jangling, sunglasses still on, hair rumpled. Same shirt he'd been wearing the last time I saw him 2 days ago. "Oh, hey," Daniel said, surprised but unfazed. "Didn't know you'd be here." "I texted you this morning," I replied. "Right, yeah, sorry, I was out running errands." Errands that apparently involved smelling like whiskey before noon. I didn't call him out, didn't raise my voice. I just nodded, grabbed my coat, and told Dad I'd be back later. As I walked past Daniel, he gave me a grin. Small, smug, like he was the one keeping everything together and I was just a visitor dropping in out of guilt. That grin stayed with me the entire drive home. But what hit harder was Dad's face when he'd asked why I was there, like he genuinely hadn't expected me, like someone had told him I wasn't around, that I didn't care. That was the moment I realized Daniel wasn't just neglecting him. He was isolating him. After that, I started coming by more often, unannounced. Every visit showed another crack. Unopened mail stacked on the counter, medication reminders ignored, Dad wearing the same clothes for days. He'd lower his voice when he talked about Daniel as if apologizing for existing, as if asking for care was a personal failure. And every time I tried to address it, there was an excuse waiting. He wanted to handle it himself. I already took care of that. You must have missed the message. Always a message I'd never received. The final straw came on a Wednesday morning. I got a call from Mrs. Levy, Dad's neighbor. She used to babysit us when we were kids, back when life felt simpler and Dad could still lift us both at once. "Tina, dear," she said softly, "I didn't want to bother you, but I saw your father outside earlier. He looked confused." My stomach dropped. She said he'd been wobbling near the sidewalk. No cane, his robe barely tied. She was worried he might fall or wander off. I left work immediately. When I pulled up, Dad was sitting on the porch step, barefoot, shivering slightly. A dried leaf clung to his temple. He didn't notice me at first. "Dad," I said, crouching beside him. "What are you doing out here?" He blinked slowly. "I think I was looking for the mailbox." Something in his voice, small loss, nearly broke me. "Where's Daniel?" He didn't answer. I helped him inside, changed his clothes, made tea. That's when Daniel finally showed up. 2 grocery bags in hand, all smiles. "Hey, old man," he laughed. "You snuck out again." Like it was funny. I didn't say anything in front of Dad. I waited until Daniel followed me out to the driveway. "What is going on?" I asked quietly. "You left him alone." "I was gone for 30 minutes, he said, rolling his eyes. "Relax. You're overreacting." He could have fallen, but he didn't. That sentence, that casual dismissal was the moment something shifted inside me. There was no remorse, no urgency, just confidence that if he said it was fine, then it was fine. I left that day knowing one thing for certain. This wasn't about convenience anymore. It was about safety. And if Daniel wanted to keep playing the role of the responsible son while letting our father fade in silence, then fine. I'd let him believe he was in control. Because I was done giving him the benefit of the doubt. The first lie I heard wasn't even told to me. It came wrapped in concern, delivered casually through someone else's voice, like an echo I wasn't meant to notice. I was at work when my phone buzzed with a text from my cousin Rachel. "Hey, just checking in. Everything okay with you and Daniel?" That was it. No accusation, no explanation, just enough to make my stomach tighten. I asked what she meant. I heard things were a little tense, that Dad's been stressed. Just wanted to make sure you're okay. I stared at the screen longer than I should have. Tense, stressed. That was how it always started. The soft version, the one that sounded reasonable before it hardened into something else. I didn't respond right away. Over the next few days, the same pattern repeated. An uncle asking why I'd been so busy lately. An aunt gently suggesting I should let Daniel help. Little comments that didn't accuse outright, but nudged the story just enough to paint me as distant, difficult, controlling. Then came the call from Dad. He sounded hesitant, careful, like every word had been weighed before it reached me. "Tina," he said, "did you tell Daniel I can't make my own decisions anymore?" My heart stuttered. "Of course not," I said immediately. "Why would you think that?" There was a pause. "He said you were worried," Dad continued, "that you were trying to take control of everything, that you don't trust me." The room felt suddenly cold. I could see it so clearly then, the way Daniel worked. He didn't confront. He planted, dropped just enough doubt to let it grow on its own, turned concern into suspicion, protection into manipulation. "Dad," I said carefully, "I just want you safe." "I am safe," he replied, a little sharper than before. "You don't need to run my life." I wanted to scream, to demand answers, to tell him everything, but fear stopped me. Fear that pushing would only drive him further into Daniel's version of reality. "I'm sorry if it came across that way," I said instead. After we hung up, I sat on the edge of my bed phone, still in my hand, heart pounding. That was the betrayal. Not the neglect, not the arrogance. The rewriting of intent. Daniel wasn't just failing to care for Dad. He was turning Dad against me. The next time I visited, I brought groceries, a printed medication schedule, and hired a private nurse to stop by 3 times a week on my dime. I paid to have the house professionally cleaned. I restocked the fridge, labeled drawers, made everything as simple as possible. Daniel watched from the doorway, arms crossed. "What's all this?" he scoffed. "You trying to win points? I'm trying to keep him out of the hospital." "Dad doesn't need all this," he said. "You're just making him soft." I didn't argue. That night, Dad texted me. "Did you tell Daniel I can't be trusted anymore?" My hands shook as I typed back. "No, I would never say that. He says you want full control." I called immediately. He didn't answer. That was when I understood the full scope of what I was up against. Daniel wasn't acting alone anymore. He was actively shaping how others saw me, how Dad saw me. 3 days later, the bank called. It was the manager who'd known our family for years. "Hi, Tina," she said carefully. "I just wanted to verify something. Your brother came in today asking to add himself as a joint owner on your father's checking account." My mouth went dry. "Did he have documentation?" I asked. "Yes," she said. "He brought a notarized document claiming he was acting under power of attorney." "That's impossible," I said flatly. "He doesn't have POA. I do." There was a pause. "That's what I thought," she said, "which is why I called you first." After I hung up, I sat in silence, the truth finally unmissable. Daniel had crossed a line. Whether he forged documents or misrepresented authority, it didn't matter. He was trying to take control of the money. Not for Dad, for himself. The next time I saw him, he was sprawled in Dad's recliner shoes on the footrest, watching TV like he'd always belonged there. "I heard you've been busy," I said calmly. He smirked. "You know me, always hustling." "Trying to add yourself to Dad's account," I tilted my head. "That's some hustle." His expression flickered just for a moment before smoothing over. "It's for convenience," he said. "Someone's got to handle things." I nodded slowly. That was when it clicked. Daniel didn't just want to help. He wanted to rewrite history, to be the son who stepped up, the hero, and he was willing to isolate, manipulate, and lie to get there. I didn't confront him. I smiled, because I finally understood the game, and I was done playing defense. There's a moment when doubt stops being a question and becomes a conclusion. For me, it happened in my car, sitting in the bank parking lot long after I'd ended the call with the manager. The engine was off, the radio silent. My hands were still on the steering wheel, knuckles white, as if I were bracing for impact that had already occurred. Daniel hadn't almost crossed a line. He had crossed it. Trying to add himself to Dad's account wasn't a misunderstanding or a misguided attempt to help. It was a calculated move, one that required either a forged document or a deliberate lie told with enough confidence to pass initial scrutiny. Either way, it meant one thing. This was no longer a family disagreement. It was fraud. I didn't confront him. Not yet. Confrontation would only alert him, push him to hide better, lie, smarter, move, faster. Daniel thrived in chaos. He knew how to perform when people were watching. So I did what I've always done. I went quiet. That night, I opened the binder I'd started months earlier and began expanding it. Tabs, dates, notes. Every interaction, every inconsistency, every missed appointment. I wrote down the neighbor's call, the empty fridge, the wandering, the bank incident. Then I called my father's lawyer the next morning. Not an email, not a text. A call. I need to review everything I told her. Every account, every asset, every document my brother might have touched. She listened without interrupting. When I finished, she said something that settled deep in my chest. He should not have had access to any of that, not legally. The words were calm, professional, but they landed like confirmation. We talked through the power of attorney, the durable one. Dad had signed months earlier, back when his mind was clear and his hands steady. It named me solely. It revoked all previous verbal permissions. It explicitly stated that all financial, medical, and legal decisions had to go through me. Daniel didn't know that. Or worse, he did, and thought he could bluff his way around it. That afternoon, I printed a notarized copy. I didn't mail it. I waited. 2 days later, I found my opportunity. Daniel was pacing the driveway, phone pressed to his ear. Voice animated. I caught fragments as I approached something about assets, future growth, and underutilized potential. He didn't see me at first. When he hung up, I stepped forward and handed him the envelope. He looked at it confused. "What's this?" I didn't answer. I turned and walked away. He called my name once, half laughing like it was a joke. I didn't look back. That night, I got a text from him. Seriously? Just one word. No denial, no outrage, no questions. I didn't respond, because by then the shift had already happened. The week that followed was quiet in the most unsettling way. Dad stopped answering my calls. When I tried to visit, Daniel said he was sleeping, not up for company, resting, always resting. And then the whispers got louder. Uncle Mike called to tell me I was being a little harsh. Aunt Carla asked why I'd cut my brother out of decisions. Someone told Rachel that I was trying to take over everything. The narrative had solidified. I was the villain now, the controlling daughter, the one who didn't trust her own father, the one who swooped in with documents and lawyers and tried to strip dignity under the guise of care. And the worst part, people believed it, because Daniel was there, because he smiled, because he told a good story. So I backed off, not because I was wrong, but because I needed to survive long enough to prove I was right. I stopped the daily visits, let calls go unanswered, gave everyone space to sit with the version of the story they'd chosen. And in that silence, I started rebuilding myself. That fall, I moved out of my tiny one-bedroom rental and into a rundown craftsman house I'd been eyeing for years. Overgrown ivy, rotting porch swing, peeling paint. It wasn't much, but it was mine. I spent weekends sanding old wood, rewiring light fixtures, replacing cracked tiles. Every small repair felt like reclaiming a piece of myself. I went back to the gym, started cooking real meals again, signed up for a woodworking class, and built a crooked but sturdy coffee table. I even started journaling. It didn't erase the betrayal, but it gave me distance. And from that distance, I saw something clearly. Daniel wasn't just playing a role. He was dependent on it. He needed the illusion of being the savior, needed people to see him that way, because without the performance, there was nothing underneath. And illusions always crack. The first one came in January, a missed mortgage payment. The bank notified me, not Daniel, because I was still listed as the fallback contact. Then an email from the in-home nurse agency, unpaid for over a month. When I called, the woman hesitated. "We haven't seen your father since mid-December," she said. "We were told services were no longer needed." No longer needed. I thanked her, hung up, and sat in silence, the familiar fire rising in my chest. Not rage. Recognition. Something was wrong. Very wrong. The low point wasn't the missed mortgage payment. It wasn't the unpaid nurse visits or the quiet realization that my brother had been dismantling my father's care piece by piece. The low point was understanding that legally I still had authority, but emotionally I had lost my father's trust. That hollow space sat in my chest for days. I didn't rush over right away, not because I didn't care, but because I needed to be sure, needed to know how deep this went before I made my next move. So I started calling. First, the pharmacy. "Have my father's prescriptions been picked up regularly?" I asked. There was a pause, then no, not since November. November. That was 2 months ago. I asked about deliveries. There were none. Next, his primary care office. Appointments missed. Follow-ups canceled. When I asked if he was okay, the nurse hesitated. "We've been trying to reach him," she said. "When we called your brother, he told us they were switching providers." No one told me. Then the gas company. The account was in my father's name. The balance was overdue. Service had been shut off 3 weeks earlier. It was winter. I didn't call Daniel. I drove. It was already dark when I pulled into the driveway. The house lights were on, but something felt off, dim, muted. I knocked. No answer. I knocked harder. Still nothing. Finally, the curtain moved. A shadow passed. The door opened. Dad stood there, thin, pale, wearing a winter coat inside the house. The heat's been out, he said quietly. Daniel said he was calling someone. My throat tightened. When was the last time you ate? He looked down. I don't remember. Inside, the air was cold and stale. The fridge was nearly empty. No groceries. No prepared food. The medicine drawer was dusty, untouched. And Daniel was nowhere. No jacket, no laptop, no mug in the sink. He's been staying somewhere else, Dad said slowly. Said he had meetings. That was when the illusion finally collapsed. Dad sat on the couch and cried, not loudly, not dramatically, but in quiet, broken sobs, like he'd been holding it together until he couldn't anymore. I thought he was helping me, he whispered. I know, I said, sitting beside him. I know. That night I stayed. I turned on space heaters, cooked scrambled eggs with the last 3 in the carton, called the gas company, sat beside Dad while he slept upright in his chair, his breath finally steady. In the morning, I called the lawyer. We need to move, I said. Now. Not revenge. Rescue. Because if Daniel had disappeared, it meant his fantasy was unraveling. And somewhere out there, he was trying to build a new one. But he'd made a mistake. He'd left receipts. And I was going to find every single one. The first thing I learned after Dad fell asleep that morning was this. You don't fix something this broken with emotion. You fix it with facts. I called Ms. Burke as soon as the sun was up. Not an email, not a voicemail, a call. Let's go through everything I said, flipping open the binder that had grown from one slim folder into 3 thick volumes. Every account, every document, every place my brother could have touched. She didn't hesitate. What followed was methodical, precise, unforgiving. Bank accounts, credit cards, utilities, insurance policies, medical authorizations, anything that required a signature, a login, or trust. We created a checklist and started ticking boxes one by one. And then she said the phrase that lit the fuse under everything that came after. If he acted outside the scope of authority he didn't have, she said carefully, that's conversion. And if he forged or misrepresented documents, that's fraud. I didn't feel rage. I felt relief. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't overreacting. The lines Daniel crossed weren't emotional. They were legal. The next step was allies. Not the loud kind. The quiet ones who had been watching from the edges. First, Mrs. Levy. I brought her coffee and sat with her on her porch. I didn't accuse, didn't interrogate. I just asked if she'd noticed anything strange over the past few months. She went inside and came back with a floral notebook like it was sacred. I didn't want to be nosy, she said softly, but something didn't feel right. Inside were dates, times, notes. September 14th. Saw Mr. Oliveros outside, alone, no cane. October 5th. Trash overflowing, no pickup. December 23rd. No visitors since before Christmas. 4 months of quiet observation. I wanted to call you more, she admitted, but Daniel said you were traveling, that you didn't want to be bothered. I thanked her, my jaw clenched tight. Second, the pharmacist. Daniel had picked up 2 months of insulin. Dad had used only 1. The rest was unaccounted for. It could be neglect, she said gently, but stockpiling medication is usually a red flag. She printed refill records for me, every date, every gap. Third, the in-home nurse agency. Billing logs, visit records, call transcripts. He canceled services, the manager said, referring to Daniel. Said they were managing care privately. Did my father confirm that I asked? No, we only spoke with your brother. She forwarded everything. Then came the forensic accountant. A friend of a friend, paid for a weekend consultation. We combed through statements together, every withdrawal, every transfer. At first it was small, $50 here, $100 there. Then came the business expenses. A $1.200 consulting retainer, a $400 software subscription, a $6,000 wire transfer labeled crypto platform deposit, and then the pattern. Weekly Venmo payments to a woman none of us recognized. We dug. She was an influencer consultant, the kind who promises 6-figure success if you trust her process. Daniel had hired her. With Dad's money. That was when this stopped being damage control. This was exposure. I made a list. Reassert POA authority. With every institution. Lock Daniel out of all accounts. Reissue Dad's ID. His old one had gone missing. Document Dad's condition with medical evaluations. rebuild care from the ground up. Neurologist, geriatric psychiatrist. Both confirmed mild cognitive impairment worsened by neglect. Not incompetence. Neglect. We reinstated nurse visits, prescription delivery, weekly meal prep, enrolled Dad in a senior day program 3 days a week. His appetite came back. His eyes cleared. Then I addressed the narrative. I wrote a letter to the family. Not dramatic, not angry. Just facts. Attached documentation. Logs, statements, dates. I didn't accuse. I let the truth speak. And then I waited, because I knew something Daniel didn't. Men like him don't disappear forever. They retreat until they think they can re-enter the story as the victim. And when he came back, he wasn't walking into confusion. He was walking into evidence. The opportunity came disguised as something ordinary. My father's birthday. I hadn't planned anything big. No banner, no speeches, just a quiet dinner at the house. Him a few relatives, familiar faces that felt safe. I didn't announce it. I didn't post anything. But in families like ours, information travels without permission. Someone told someone else. And Daniel showed up. He arrived late, of course. Leather jacket, hair slicked back, a department store gift bag swinging from his hand like a peace offering. He walked in with that same smile, the one that used to charm teachers, neighbors, girlfriends. The one that said, "Nothing can touch me." "Well, look who's back," he said loudly. "Miss me?" No one answered. Dad looked up from his chair, startled, confused. "Daniel," he said slowly, "you're here." "Wouldn't miss it, old man," Daniel replied, handing over the bag like it weighed nothing. Then he turned to the room. "Sorry I've been a ghost. Business stuff. But I'm here now. Family's family, right?" His eyes flicked to me. The challenge was there. I smiled. Dinner passed in a strange haze. Forks clinked. Small talk stumbled forward. Daniel dominated the room, telling stories about projects and opportunities, carefully avoiding anything concrete. He played the role perfectly, concerned son misunderstood, brother man under pressure. After dessert, when plates were still scattered and coffee cups half full, I cleared my throat. "I know this isn't the easiest moment," I said calmly, "but there's something I need to share." I opened the folder I'd brought. The sound of paper shifting cut through the room. "There's been a lot of confusion the past few months," I continued. "A lot of miscommunication. I just want everyone to see the facts." I handed out copies. Bank statements, nurse agency logs, pharmacy records, medical evaluations, the reverse mortgage notice, each page labeled, dated. Daniel's smile vanished. "What is this?" he snapped. I didn't look at him. I watched the others instead. Brows furrowed, pages flipped. Silence thickened. Aunt Carla was the first to speak. "Is this real?" "Yes," I said. "Every number verified. Originals are available." Daniel tried to laugh. "This is a setup. She twisted things to make me look bad." But no one turned to him. They turned away. That was the moment. The narrative broke. Dad sat beside me, quietly reading his own medical summary. His hands trembled, but he didn't look confused anymore. He looked clear. I hadn't even mentioned the legal filings yet. Those would come later. That night, Daniel lingered by the door. His smile didn't reach his eyes anymore. "You think this changes anything?" he muttered. "It already has," I replied. "You just haven't felt it yet." He scoffed. "You dragging my name through the mud makes you the better daughter." I looked at him for a long moment. "No," I said softly. "Abandoning our father in a cold house with no food or medication made you the worst son." He opened his mouth. Nothing came out. I went back inside. The next morning, the real work began. Not the emotional kind. Not the kind that ends with raised voices or slammed doors. This was quieter, sharper, irreversible. Phase 1 legal. Ms. Burke and I filed the formal complaint fraud, financial elder abuse breach of fiduciary duty. We didn't rush to court theatrics. We filed notice. We initiated investigation. And because I already held durable power of attorney, backed by recent medical evaluations documenting Dad's cognitive impairment worsened by neglect, the court granted temporary conservatorship protections without hesitation. That meant one thing. Daniel couldn't touch a single dollar. Phase 2 financial lockout. I spent an entire day on the phone. Banks, utilities, credit cards, streaming services, anywhere his name might still be lurking. Access revoked. Passwords reset. Alerts activated. The joint credit card he'd convinced Dad to open closed. The crypto accounts frozen under fraud review. The influencer consultant he'd been paying reached out within hours, passive-aggressive and confused. I forwarded the court documents and suggested she contact her own lawyer. She never wrote back. Phase 3 reputation. I didn't blast him publicly. I didn't post receipts online. I didn't need to. I shared the binder with Aunt Carla, with Uncle Mike, with Rachel. Then I stepped back. Truth moves slower than gossip, but it stays longer. Over the next 2 weeks, Daniel's calls stopped being returned. Conversations stalled. Invitations dried up. The family that once hovered uncertainly now avoided his name altogether. The golden boy status didn't shatter loudly. It cracked quietly. Phase 4, clarity. I hosted a family meeting at my house, not out of spite, out of necessity. Folders waited on the table, clean, organized, neutral. This isn't a trial, I said when Daniel arrived late and froze in the doorway. This is a courtesy. He accused me of enjoying it. I didn't respond. You'll be contacted by the court, I continued. Any attempt to interfere with Dad's care or finances going forward will result in additional charges. He laughed brittle. So what? You want me in jail? I want you accountable. He slammed the door on his way out. No one followed. After that, I focused on Dad. With consistent care, he improved. His appetite returned. His strength followed. The house felt warm again, literally and otherwise. We sat on the porch some evenings, watching the sun drop behind the trees, drinking the same coffee he used to buy when I was a kid. One afternoon, he looked at me and said quietly, I always thought he'd grow up. I know, I replied. Do you think I failed him? I shook my head. No, he failed himself. Dad nodded. Then he reached out, gripped my wrist with surprising strength and said, Thank you for seeing what I couldn't. It was the first time he'd said anything like that. Epilogue. Daniel didn't go to jail, not immediately. The investigation dragged on, but the evidence was overwhelming. He settled. Full restitution. Formal relinquishment of any future inheritance rights. He avoided a felony by cooperating and signing away everything he'd touched. The consultants sued him. He moved out of state. I hear he's trying to start another hustle, another spotlight, another version of himself. We don't talk about him much anymore. Dad's house is peaceful now, stable, safe. And me, I don't feel like the quiet daughter anymore. I feel like the one who stayed, the one who showed up, the one who understood the difference between loyalty and enablement and chose the harder path. This was never about revenge. It was about removing rot, lies, illusion. And once the illusion burned away, what remained was real, unshakable, whole.